Walter E. Williams tells us what the issue is with black culture. Spoiler alert, it's not the police, it is out of wedlock births and fragmented families, which leads to all these other problems. Here's what he says. The pretense is that the police conduct stands as the root of black problems. According to the NAACP, from 1882 to 1968, we've covered a lot of this. Some of this will be new for you, though. According to the NAACP, from 1882 to 1968, there were 3,446 black people lynched at the hands of whites. Today, being murdered by whites or policemen should be the least of black worries. In recent times, there is an average of 9,252 black-on-black murders every year. I've covered that. See the link under the video, which will contain all the information from 2004 to 2018. My research on the FBI, 39,144 black-on-black homicides, 42,200 white-on-white homicides. When you consider that whites are 4.5 times the population of blacks, that is a gargantuan disparity. Continuing with what Walter said, over the past 35 years, that translates into nearly 324,000 blacks murdered at the hands of other blacks. Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo were recently laughing about the violence, the increased violence in a lot of these Democrat-run cities. They don't care about it. Over the past 35 years, that translates into nearly 324,000 blacks murdered at the hands of other blacks. Only a tiny percentage of blacks are killed by the police. For example, in Chicago this year, there were 414 homicides with a total of 2,078 people shot. So far in 2020, 3 people have been killed by police and 4 were shot. Manhattan Institute scholar Heather McDonald reports that a police officer / Leo is 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black male than an unarmed black male is to be killed by a police officer. Crime is a major problem for many black communities, but how much of it can be attributed to causes such as institutional racism, systemic racism, and white privilege? I guess my white privilege was I had 2 good parents. Don't you find it funny? I hate to get off track. Black Lives Matter works against the nuclear family. It's almost as if they want black people to fail. Continuing with what Walter said, the most devastating problem is a very weak black family structure. Less than 1/3 of black children live in 2-parent households, and illegitimacy stands at 75%. Last I looked, it was about, that's roughly a little over 70%. The legacy of slavery is often blamed. Such an explanation turns out to be sheer nonsense when one examines black history. Even during slavery, where marriage was forbidden, most black children lived in biological 2-parent families. Professor Herbert G. Gutman's research in The Black Family in Slavery and Freedom, 1750 to 1925, found that 3/4 of 19th century slave families, all the children had the same mother and father. In New York City in 1925, read about those New York City tenements in the 1880s and 1890s. See how bad it was there for everybody. Again, I digress. In New York City in 1925, 85% of black households were 2-parent. In fact, 5 in 6 children under the age of 6, 5 in 6 children under the age of 6 lived with both parents. During slavery and as late as 1920, a black teenage girl raising a child without a man present was a rarity. Now it is shocking to see. Hey, we're just telling the truth here. Don't let the truth get you butthurt. Change your life. You can change your life if you're having trouble. I know it's not easy. I've had to overcome things too. Don't put yourself behind the 8 ball. Too many black people are doing that. An 1880 study of family structure in Philly shows that 3/4 of all black families were nuclear families. 3/4 of all black families were nuclear families. Speaking of nuclear families, back in the 90s, the Democrats wanted to reform immigration, and one of the things they stressed, this was the Democrats, nuclear families. Now they're against that because they know they can manipulate. Strong, intact nuclear families, as Tucker Carlson said long ago, are a threat to the Democrat power structure. Stan Cedar, he's divorced. He has a fragmented family. People like him who are failures in life.
And you know what they say about divorcees? A hypocrite.
And degenerates, they want to bring in more people like them. It's easier to manipulate those people into a welfare state. So they don't want nuclear families, like Black Lives Matter speaks against it. They hate the nuclear family. They hate success. Again, continuing. An 1880 study of family structure in Philly shows that 3/4 of all black families were nuclear families. There were only slight differences in family structure between racial groups. That's huge. The percentages of nuclear families were black, 75.2%, Irish, 82.2%, German, 84.5%, and native white Americans, 73.1%. Only 1/4 of black families were female-headed. Female-headed families among Irish, German, and native white Americans averaged 11%. According to the 1938 Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, only 11% of black children and 3% of white children were born to unwed mothers. For whites, it's last I looked, is about 30%. Blacks has been hovering around 70% for 3 decades. As Thomas Sowell reported, going back 100 years when blacks were just one generation out of slavery, we find that census data of that era showed that a slightly higher percentage of black adults had married than white adults. This fact remained true in every census from 1890 to 1940. The absence of a father in the home predisposes children, especially boys, to academic failure, criminal behavior, and economic hardship, not to mention an intergenerational repeating of handicaps. If today's weak family structure is a legacy of slavery, then the people who make such a claim must tell us how it managed to skip nearly 5 generations to have an effect. Then I've got some links down there you can to add to it, and if you read some more if you'd like to. But Black Lives Matter and the organizations that support them are evil, immoral organizations that are destroying people. They're destroying families. In fact, they oppose nuclear families. And the Democrat Party has become the party of the fragmented family. They have become the party of the dysfunctional child. And all their policies will just lead to more of that. And that's what they want. But some black people are waking up. Don't have kids before you're done with high school. You don't have to use drugs. You don't have to sit around and listen to rap music and you can go read a book. You don't have to do the gang culture. You don't have to be a tough guy. You can be a bookworm. And a lot of black people are starting to wake up. And the more that do, the Democrats won't be able to treat them like victims. You don't have to be a victim. Have a nice day. And don't thank me now for the information.